This series of e-learning videos is used in conjunction with the printed participant guide for Evaporators and More seal system training. If you don't already have it, please ask your manager for a printed copy of the participant guide for you to follow along and to fill in activity information. Prior to taking this course, you must complete the following prerequisites. In Segno e-learning, In-Home Technician Safety, Refrigeration Basics, Common Refrigeration Issues, Acetylene Oxygen Safety Training, Flammable Refrigerant Safety and Policy, Flammable Refrigerant Safety and Awareness, the Nitrogen Learning Plan, and the Diagnosing R600A Seal System Learning Plan, and Refrigeration Instructor-Led Training Modules 1 through 8. It is recommended that the modules be taken in the order shown. This is Part 1 of Evaporators and More. In this course you will learn how to understand when, why, and how to use dye dryers, review the evaporator and heat exchanger replacement process, discuss the non-repairable scenario, understand different designs of dual evaporator products, describe how the stepper valve operates and how to diagnose, and understand how to diagnose and order parts for the R600A system. In the prior modules and per Service Bulletin 46-11, the leak checks can initially begin with the electronic leak detector and gas trap if refrigerant pressure currently exists in the system. You should always be on the lookout for traces of oil as well. When that doesn't work, or if there is no pressure or not enough pressure, any remaining refrigerant in the system is recovered, then dry nitrogen is used at maximum safe pressure and the leak found using an approved leak detection solution. When the leak is located, safely release the nitrogen, then repair the leak and replace the dryer. Service filter dryers labeled as UV dye contain a dye pellet inside. The pellet releases dye into the refrigerant and oil and requires time to circulate throughout the system. 72 hours of operation should be allowed before examining with the UV light and glasses. Most but not all refrigerator manufacturers promote the use of the dye dryer during a seal system repair. When a dye dryer is already installed on the product, a search for dye can aid in locating a leak and can begin right away. Otherwise, the dye must be circulated throughout the system during normal operation and therefore recommended to return 72 hours later. A lack of dye found on an external component and tubing does not prove that a leak exists internal of the cabinet. Be aware that fluorescent leak detection solution can appear to be a leak when using the filtered light and glasses. All solution should be wiped off completely, as some may pit the metal tubing and create a leak. Also, the lock prep used for lock ring connections can also simulate dye. A factory lock ring is shown here. Here are some examples of service dryers with UV dye. Most product does not include a dye dryer during production and therefore is not typically listed on the parts list. There are some exclusions for dye dryer use. Do not install a dye dryer on a product where the seal system components are in direct contact with a consumable item, such as a freestanding ice maker of the type where the water flows across the evaporator. If a leak develops, the dye will go into the water or ice and could be consumed by the user. Also, GE does not allow dye in their refrigeration product and will not pay that claim and will likely void the warranty. For GE branded product warranty service calls, do not install a dye dryer, again, as GE does not allow it. On an out-of-warranty call, such as on a protection agreement call, a dye dryer may be used on GE product. We do not repair aluminum evaporators, and most are replaceable. When brazing, do not overheat the aluminum to copper transition. Precautions are required not to damage plastic parts and liners. Flame barriers and heat-absorbing paste are a must to protect and prevent damage of plastic parts and liners. The Whirlpool Kit 4387444 includes the paste, flame guard, and a cardboard canopy to keep the heat from the torch from rising and damaging the sealing in the compartment. All flammable refrigerant systems must use lock ring and no brazing. Lock ring can, however, be used on any refrigerant and will eliminate heat-related damages. Up next are two videos created by Electrolux Frigidaire, and even though these videos have been around a while, the topics of evaporator replacement and heat exchanger replacement are still relative. Take notes in your participant guide as you watch the videos. Make a point to discuss with your mentor or trainer some things that should be done differently.
Okay, on the evaporator cover, I've already removed the shelves and some of the screws, but one thing I want to point out, it is very necessary when you put these back in that you put the bottom lip of the evaporator cover inside the drain trough. Now, this is a little different than previous models where it went on the outside. Putting it inside will assure any water running down the back side of the evaporator cover will flow into the trough and not leak out between the trough and the cover, winding up underneath the basket in the bottom of your freezer. As you can see, your air return hole right here, but it goes down at an angle, about a 45-degree angle, returning from the food compartment, so you don't have the straight through, and this does stop a lot of the backwash coming through it. To service into the fan motor, it's a lot easier if you remove these two screws. That'll let you lift this panel up without putting a fold mark in it. Now, I found it a lot easier that if you just take one of the shelves and sit them back in place and let the cover set down, that'll hold it up out of your way. Unplug the fan motor, disconnect your ground wire, and the fan motor assembly will slide out of here in one complete unit. Then you can go ahead and replace the fan motor or fan blade, whatever you need. Defrost limit switch, of course, is snapped over top of the aluminum evaporator. Simply a matter of reaching in and unclipping it. Now, you will find that it is part of the wiring harness now. Your defrost limiter is hardwired into the harness to get rid of connection problems. The kit that you'll get when you order a defrost limiter will have two solderless connectors and two pieces of heat shrink, so it will be necessary to cut and splice them in. The defrost heater itself still has the bayonet quick disconnect plugs, so you can unplug your defrost heater, disconnect your one wire, and this takes out basically the removable part of your wiring harness. Okay, first you're going to want to get the black damper off of here, so take a pocket knife and cut a slit down through here. Remove your damper pad. At that point, you're going to take your three-cornered file and cut yourself a notch around your capillary tube and go ahead and break your cap tube off. Then go ahead and cut your suction line loose from your evaporator. Bend your evaporator up out of the way a little bit. You've got three screws that you're going to have to remove because you will have to tip the drain trough to pull the evaporator out. Get a hold of your evaporator drain trough and slide that thing slightly forward. And take it on out of the product. Drill out your single pop rivet. Allow you to pop your clamp out and take your old evaporator out of your drain trough. You'll at that point have to transfer your defrost heater to your new evaporator and make darn sure that you replace these two foam blocks that go on each side of the evaporator. They are essential for the refrigerator's operation, and a lot of times they get left out. But these are what force the air to go between the fin and tubes and not go up alongside and bypass the evaporator. Set your evaporator back down in your drain trough. Take your replacement hanger bracket. Now that you've got this ready to go back in, we'll have to prepare our heat shield for the back of our liner to protect it from damage when doing your welding. Coming in your evaporator kit, you've got a nylon cloth. Just take a sharp pocket knife and cut yourself a small X right in the middle of the cloth. What you want to do at this point then is push this over top of that heat exchanger sticking out of the back of that cabinet. Okay, now take your drain trough and set it back in place, using the drain trough to hold the heat shield in place. This will allow you to slide your evaporator up. Lining up your suction line and connect it into your new evaporator. Okay, go ahead and insert your capillary tube back into your evaporator. In most cases, you will have to crimp it just a bit. Make sure it stays there until you make your weld. At this point, you're going to want to take your heat shield off, but before you do that, go ahead and take your inspection mirror and come in and go around your welds real well, making darn sure that you've got a good weld before you go ahead and take that heat shield out of there. Check both your suction line and your capillary tube. For the few minutes it takes, it's a lot easier than trying to fish that heat shield back in again once you've removed it. Looks like we've got a couple good welds. Now at this point, what you want to do is simply go into one of the seams and just start slitting the heat shield and pulling it upwards. The heat shield was designed for one-time use. We do not recommend reusing them. You will get a new one with any additional evaporator that you would order. Get the rest of your residue out of there. You can now shove the evaporator back into place. Push it down until you get it lined up with your holes, and go ahead and put your screws back in. When you have a blocked capillary tube and it becomes necessary to replace the heat exchanger due to the fact that the original heat exchanger is buried, you're not going to be able to take it out. So what you'll have to do is run another one down behind the refrigerator. So tip the original heat exchanger up out of your way and come directly below it and drill yourself a 1/2 inch hole through the back of your cabinet. Okay, what you're going to want to do is attach your new evaporator to your new heat exchanger. At that point, through the hole you've already pre-drilled in your cabinet, run your heat exchanger through the hole, shove it back in place with your evaporator already in your drain trough. Just keep working it back through the hole in the cabinet. Okay, now it's going to be necessary for you to lift your evaporator back up until you get it lined up with the holes. Okay, at this point, go ahead and take your permagum. Permagum your hole shut real good on the inside. Also take a piece of it and permagum the end of the old heat exchanger where you cut that off. At this point, you can go ahead and reinstall your wiring harness and your fan motor. After pushing your heat exchanger through the hole, also included in your heat exchanger kit will be a section of armor flex that you'll need to slide over the heat exchanger and additional permagum to permagum the hole in the back of the cabinet shut. Reroute your heat exchanger down and across the back of your refrigerator. Bring it around in a full circle. Connect your suction line into your compressor suction line. Your capillary tube, you'll have a lot of excess cap tube. The easiest thing I've found is just to spin it around the suction line. That helps control rattling in it in the future. Go ahead and connect your capillary tube into your new dryer filter. At this point, you can go ahead and hook onto your dryer filter process tool and your compressor process stub and pump your refrigerator down to recharge it. While it's pumping down, you also have a new galvanized cover that comes with it that you'll install on the back of the product to cover up the heat exchanger. You should put this on so it's level with the top of your machine compartment. You have screws provided in the kit that will cut their own holes, so it's not necessary to pre-drill the hole. You have holes in the galvanized cover. Just set your screw in there and go ahead and sink your screws in.
Each video is available in Media Search if or when a review is needed. Brazing in this area requires some preparation and precautionary steps to prevent damage. When the copper to aluminum transition is near the connection to be brazed, heat trap paste is to be added at the transition to protect it from overheating. To protect the liner, use thermal paste and flame cloth materials. For this example, where the crimp was removed on a Source 795 refrigerator capillary, brazing was performed using an air acetylene torch with number 2 tip. The torch flame is pointed to the side to minimize direct contact with the flame-resistant cloth. Lockering will certainly minimize damage since a torch is not required. Note, Source 795 has a replacement capillary tube available, and for single evaporator models only, a replacement heat exchanger is also available. As a reminder, all flammable refrigerant systems must use lockring, no brazing. When faced with a potential non-repairable seal system failure, documentation is required. Use SS46-07 as a guide for what information is needed. These are examples: the ambient temperature, initial compartment temperatures, initial static and operating pressures, both high and low side, test procedure used, and test results. Record the information on the SS46-09 form and include the form in a photo of the seal system failure. Please note that major brand non-Kenmore warranty requires vendor-specific parts, including the filter dryer, and most manufacturers now have their own dye dryer. The best way to document your diagnosis is through photos and tech comments. You must call STAC if you have come to the conclusion of a non-repairable failure. Remember the tasks needed before calling STAC. It is recommended to send the photos of the progress of the diagnosis prior to calling STAC so the STAC agent can see them sooner than later. Again, use SS46-07 as a guide for the required information. See RB46-09 for more information concerning non-repairable requirements. This concludes Part 1 of Evaporators and More. Please watch Part 2 at your next available opportunity to continue with seal system training.